It's your boy Fight Critic here to give you guys another video. And I know, I haven't done a video in about 2 weeks. And trust me, it is not purposely done. Well, I haven't been doing it, purposely. One of the big reasons why I haven't been able to put anything out is mostly because I have been going through a lot of very, very challenging times. Not necessarily anything wrong in my personal life, but stuff that's been happening in my professional career. For starters, number one, getting tired of job recruiters. You guys are really, really annoying. You're really, really pissing me off. And mostly because you either contact me and don't follow up, or you're putting me in a position to contact me, but you're not really doing much, in my opinion, in order to help facilitate a smoother transition process. Normally, when a recruiter really reaches out to you, 9 times out of 10, the job is in the bag when a recruiter reaches out to you. The fact that every single recruiter I've met, I've not gotten anything, haven't even gotten an offer, pisses me off because as somebody like myself, who I hold to a lot of high standards, I interview extremely well when it comes to jobs. So the idea that I'm not getting an offer because something might be wrong with me is absolutely asinine. But what I thought was really interesting is the last job that I got rejected for, in terms of I was right at the offer stage. The same recruiter was actually also recruiting one of my colleagues at my current place of employment. And I thought it was very, very interesting that me and him also realized this. So we were talking, and we had it, talked prior to going through the interview process. We were actually right before the offer stage before we realized that we were both being recruited. And we hadn't had any real follow-up conversations with the actual person that was looking to bring us on board. We were just having conversations prior to the offer stage. And what I found was very interesting was that me and him both had the same demands in terms of what we wanted from this place that was looking to hire. And I thought what was very interesting is that the demands that I made, they tried to talk me down from those demands. Whereas with him, they actually ended up making him an offer for the same demands that he had. And obviously, you could probably get, the idea that me and him have a different type of complexion when it's between me and them. So I thought that was very, very interesting, and it pissed me off. Not because he got the offer, because I'm really proud of him. He's a really good colleague of mine. He works really hard, and I think he deserves everything that he goes after. But I'm really pissed off at the fact that the company thought it was a good idea to try to talk me off, try to talk me down of the demands that I made when they were the same exact demands that he made, and they met him at those demands. And this just goes to show you that, the game is rigged. The game is going to be rigged no matter what. And I think one of the biggest problems that I do have is that society gives us a statistic as far as where black men should be considered in this country in terms of employment, in terms of payment, in terms of status of life. And when somebody outperforms what those statistics says and asks for something that is higher than what those statistics, I love how jobs like to try to talk you back down into that statistical range. Rather than when you meet your counterpart, they don't do that bullshit. So that's what I was really, really pissed off about. And I was also pissed off about was mostly because with today, a role that I'm doing in my current profession, which gives me access to a lot of resources nationally, I was alleviated of that role. While I'm still in the current regional position that I do, that role was something that I worked really hard on for the last year. And I thought it was absolute bullshit that I got alleviated of it. But at the end of the day, I'm not the type of person that's going to complain about shit, because ultimately, complaining ain't going to solve shit. But here in this video, and I'm sorry that I went on that tangent, I'm here to talk about something a little bit different because I know I've got content to put out for you guys. I know I got to actually get out a ton of videos for you guys over the next week to week and a half. And for me, I wanted to get this video out of the way because mostly this video is something that I know Town and I have been talking about this week. And what we have to talk about, and if you guys haven't checked out his channel, I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. But I need to talk about this Nike situation because I am absolutely pissed off about this Nike situation. Now, on the surface, I'm not pissed off that Joe Hebert was a reseller. I'm not pissed off that Ann Hebert, who was the vice president of Nike, is Joe's mother. I'm not pissed off that she had the job that she had. What I'm pissed off about is the fact that she was in a position that influenced an entire market, and she had her son take advantage of it, not from exploiting any loopholes in the system, but deliberately screwing over customers in order to do it. Now, obviously, everything here is good, that I'm saying is alleged, so I'm not going to sit there and just say that this is for a fact. But my biggest issue with this is that Ann has pushed the reliance on Nike using the sneakers app for their releases, and at the same time, because of that, you've seen so many people angry with the sneakers app. ranging from their engineering to their faulty servers to everything that is wrong about Nike. A lot of it has to do with the sneakers app. And I'm not talking about things such about their production and things like that. Trust me, the production side is a totally different argument that I can probably tie into this. But my biggest problem with this Ann Hibbert situation is the fact that she deliberately pushed the company to rely on an app that is daily screwing over people, but she is allowing her son to take advantage of it. And that's a big problem for me because the reselling business in sneakers in general, whether you're reselling, Adidas, whether you're reselling Nike, whether you're reselling Pumas, or you're reselling any hype release, this is basically a $1 billion industry. Not the selling of these merchandise, but the reselling of it is a $1 billion industry. And in fact, there's a good chance that the resale market is probably equaling the same amount of revenue that the actual selling market is doing, which means that you don't have to actually sell sneakers as a distributor in order to make money. You can just sell the cop. So my biggest issue when it comes to it is so many people hate the idea that any pair of sneaker that they want nowadays, they have to go through a reseller. This was never the case. Before, all you had to do was, if you wanted a hype sneaker, you were more than likely going to get you were going to have to get it off the second market. There was never an idea that if you found a regular pair of sneakers, whether it was some regular Air Maxes or some regular Dunks, you were going to be able to purchase that pair or go out, stand in a line and purchase the pair or win a raffle. But Nike has circulated every single pair of a sneaker release to the sneakers app. And that forces people to be competitive just to purchase a sneaker that they like, whether they're reselling, whether they're botting, whether they're just looking to cop for the cop manually. This increases the amount of stress on a $1 billion company's server that should be able to account for these things. And my biggest problem with it, and I have a lot of big problems with it, one of my biggest problems is this. I have a personal gripe with the sneakers app. I have a personal gripe because I have been complaining to Nike for the last 18 months why my sneakers app does not show me my purchase history. Now you're asking, why would you be upset that this app is not showing your purchase history? Because the sneakers app is where they do the draw. The draw is when a release comes out, they give you 10 minutes to enter into a raffle. And essentially, should you be picked, you will be purchasing the sneaker and they will send you confirmation. And my biggest problem with it is that the only way to get better odds at the draw is to have a purchase history that reflects that you have purchased more inventory. And the fact that my purchase history only shows me half of my sneaker purchases, despite the fact that if I go to the traditional Nike app, I see everything that I've purchased. It is fully up to date. But in this sneakers app, it doesn't even have my first sneakers purchase, which is the Off-White Vapor Max All White from 2017. It doesn't even have that sneaker. It doesn't even show me all the Jordan 4s that I bought over the last 2 years. And those are Jordan 4 sneakers that weren't even personally mine. Those were sneakers that I just entered into these draw competitions so I could cop for one of my homies who was just giving me the money. I'm not a big fan of the Jordan 4 sneaker. He is. He's married. He don't got time for that shit, so he hits me up. And I'm like, cool, I'll actually enter in. And I've never missed on a Jordan 4 unless it was a super hype release. But when it comes to this situation, I have a problem because those transactions are not showing, which ruins my odds at the draw. Meanwhile, the VP who's overseeing this application is allowing her son to purchase using her company credit card, her discount at the outlet. And I know what you're thinking, oh, the outlet, there's usually nothing there. Cool, there's something called the cage at the outlet. And secondly, if you are around any sort of retail business, whether you are a retail employee or a corporate employee, not every piece of quantity that is made that makes it past the production line will make it into the retail stores or into the warehouses for any sort of consumer purchase. There will always be pairs of sneakers that have even the slightest and the tiniest defects that make it a non-sellable purchasable item. And that's where it goes to. It goes to the outlet. And this counts for your hype releases. There's nothing that says that Nike puts an extra strain on quality when it comes to a hype release. No, they go through the same channels. That means that Joe Hebert was getting access to specific hype releases that didn't make the production line, that didn't hit those stores. And that went directly to the outlet into what they call the cage, which is a vault of hype release sneakers at the outlet. You don't fucking stumble onto 6 pairs of Air Mags in a quote unquote warehouse that somebody just left behind. That's bullshit. I don't care if you live in Oregon where Nike headquarters are. You had access to it. And secondly, just like this picture, you blurred your face out. You didn't blur it out because you didn't want anybody to know who you were. You blurred it out because you knew that everybody would recognize you as Ann Hibert's son, especially for somebody who has a strong social media presence as a reseller. And third, Ann Hibbert went to Nike in 2018 and they knew about this. Nike knew Ann's son was reselling sneakers. Ann knew her son was reselling sneakers. She knew so much that her husband signed the LLC that made it possible for him to be running his business right now, because at the time he was too young. And then when he became old enough, because he's only 19 right now, he got handed the LLC over to him so that he can run his reselling business. And we're not talking about 10, 20, 30 pairs of sneakers. We are talking about tens of thousands of inventory. If this kid is able to get his hands on releases like the Off-White Jordan 5, where he was able to get somewhere around 200 to 300 pairs of sneakers. You're talking about a shoe that retailed at $225 and resold anywhere from $550 to $1,300 a pair. That is somebody who is absolutely making bank. And then he's running a Discord that is charging people $250 a month. He's making $100,000 a month on selling signals and talking about, oh, he just grinds harder than everybody else. Oh, he just works harder than everybody else. No, you don't. You are getting intel on this. And this is the part that bothers me about the legality of things is if this was me working in a retail location, I would have been carried out in handcuffs for this bullshit. And you want to know why? Why does Joe Hebert know when inventory is going to hit Nike's headquarters? How does Joe Hebert know to run SKUs at Nike Outlet? How does Joe Hebert have access to that inventory? Those are things that are held privately with companies, especially retail companies. You want to know why? Because if you are able to get the retail SKU of a piece of merchandise and be able to tell its quantity, you're actually able to get the barcode and transact it. Has anybody not realized that? And the reason why I know these things is when I was younger, I used to work a retail job. I used to run SKUs all day long. I used to run inventories. I used to run inventories for high price ticket items. So I know all of this stuff. If I found a piece of merchandise in my store and there was no regulation of it based on the SKU, and if it didn't appear anywhere, guess what I did? I took it. Why? Because it wasn't even marked in stock. So how does Joe Hebert know when discounts are going to happen on other retail sites so that he can set up his bots? How does Joe Hebert know when stuff's going to hit the outlet? How does Joe Hebert know when sales are going to happen? His mother. That's what. That's who was telling him, in my opinion. Because there's no way that anybody like me or you or any black person would have been able to just step down from their position. No, we would have been carried out in handcuffs from wherever we were. We would have had federal agents show up. Nike would have taken out such a crazy lawsuit against us for actually taking sensitive information like merchandise SKUs and barcodes and giving it to outside personnel, let alone the family. You know, nobody cares that Joe Hebert is her son if he's getting 5 pairs of sneakers. You know, you got a ton of athletes that are signed to Nike where their family gets a shit ton of pairs of sneakers. Kyrie Irving's family gets a shit ton of sneakers. But when you talk about getting a couple thousand pairs in a release, and not just any generic release, but a hype release for the sake of reselling, and then you, the reseller, put yourself on blast because you wanted clout. You wanted to be known. And you went out and you contacted a journalist at Bloomberg to do a piece on you. You know, talking about your business, you know, flexing with all your sneaker pairs, talking about how much money you make from reselling. But you made all that money and your mother still pay your cell phone bill, which is how you got caught. So when you call that journalist, your mother's name appears on the caller ID. And when the journalist puts two and two together, you ask the journalist, hey, don't put my mom's info out there. Don't make that connection. She's got nothing to do with this. If I'm a journalist, this is a bigger story than me covering you. The VP of Nike has a son that is a reseller. And then suddenly, Nike, of course, likes to do this thing where they're just like, oh my God, we had no idea. We found a transaction that he made with her corporate card. We found a transaction on the Amex. And as somebody who is an Amex holder, because a lot of people are talking about, well, like parents give their kids credit cards all the time to charge things out. He charged $160,000 worth of merchandise on that card. Look, I have an American Express. If I see my bill go over 1,000, I'm paying close attention to it. So imagine the VP of Nike seeing $160,000 worth of merchandise. And anytime you are making excessive levels of payment, well, not payments, but transactions on American Express, they reach out to you to make sure it's you. If American Express has never seen you spend 20 grand and you swipe for 40, they're gonna send you a text message to make sure it's you. And if it's her card, she's getting notified. Don't bullshit me about this, because this shit happens to me if I swipe for something that's 5 grand. I took a trip to Toronto. I swiped for almost 7 grand on my Amex. And I had an Amex rep calling me just to make sure. Because when you have a charge card, you have a invisible limit on a charge card, especially if it's American Express card. And what that means is that despite the fact that you got no limit on that card, there is a threshold of spending that you need to exceed prior before you can push yourself further up. And when I first got that platinum card that I have, which I love because of all the perks and benefits, I spent 7 grand that first weekend that I had that card. And I came back and I was like, I had a bunch of other things to get because I had all the money ready to pay the card off. But they kept declining my transaction. I'm like, how do you decline me from swiping? And I called them up and it was just like, hey, yeah, like, we gave you an initial, predetermined like line of about $9,000. And they were saying, hey, if you make a payment, you'll be able to actually push that limit further up so that you can keep spending. What this tells me is if Ann Hibert's American Express card was able to push through for $160,000, that means that Joe Hebert was actually swiping for far more money on that card, and she knew about it. So don't sit there and tell me she didn't know. That the game doesn't work like this. And lastly, Nike is not off the hook here. You knew about this. You knew about this back when she wasn't the VP and you approached her about it. You didn't make a case about this. The problem that you have is that he snitched and it made you look bad, so you had to ask her to step down. But anybody else in these retail stores, you would have carried them out in handcuffs. Don't even play yourself like that. We already know what the game is. If it was anybody that was black in that retail store, you'd have absolutely had their local police station pull up. Hello, sir, this is you. Cool, we would like to question you further. You're under arrest. I've seen it happen to retail employees. There's no way that a retail company isn't stricter with their employees purchasing as opposed to other people. There are harsher, not only penalties, but restrictions and requirements for employees to be making purchases. You can't just walk it. You can't just be an employee and purchase something. Even when I was at specific retailers, I would have to go in, use an internal computer and place an order, but that way in order to get something. And I had to distinctly let them know what the purchase was, who was it for, and the intended use of it. You think that if I went into my old jobs and I went in and I bought something and I resell it, you think they can't just track down that fucking SKU? Like, let's just be honest about it. If anybody has ever bought a sneaker from Joe Hebert, I guarantee you do this. Take that box, go to Nike, and say, hey, I purchased these from a reseller. I want to know if these are a legit pair of sneakers. They can scan that box and see if that SKU is live in terms of if it ever hit the department, and they can look up the transaction history of it, because you can do that. And I guarantee you that shit will trace all the way back to Joe and Ann. So I'm not using the sneakers app anymore. I'm not probably even purchasing anything from Nike anymore. Unless I could get this shit at my local shop or some of the shops around the way, I'm not gonna care as much about all these releases. I'll go out if I have to go through, JD Sports, if I have to go through Finish Line, if I gotta go through Shoe Palace or Foot Locker or Snipes, I will go through those websites before I ever use the Nike sneaker apps again, because it's deliberately, to me, in my opinion, that Anne was rigging sneakers so that her son can make these purchases, so that he can resell at, 200 to 300% value, and you want to act like she doesn't know about it. The fuck out of here.